Are you feeling lost on your spiritual awakening? Don't worry, I got you covered. What's up, everyone? I'm Johnny Sage, and I'm a healer and spiritual life coach. My awakening process started back between 2004 and 7. It was more with the truth movement stuff, and that's where I stayed for quite a long time. And then it was around 2017 when I was into alternative health by then. I got into that around 2008 and 9. But I was starting to come across a lot of issues. It felt like my life was falling apart. I was having some inflammation in my shoulder and my knee. I was really depressed. I had anxiety, PTSD. And I had moved out to Los Angeles. But what I moved out there for, I couldn't do anymore, and I didn't want to do it. I wasn't able to function in the matrix anymore. Nothing really appealed to me out here. And I just felt like my life was basically over. I couldn't do a matrix job anymore. I was at that point. No amount of money could entice me. I was just done. My only other option at the time was back in 2014, I had this friend who went to a Buddhist monastery, and he ended up becoming a Buddhist monk in the Theravada tradition. He's still doing it. And that's what I thought the answer might be, because that was really the only spirituality I knew about back then. And Buddhism made sense. Like, in all the texts I read and the meditation practices, they greatly helped me up until that point. And I give him credit because he's the one who introduced me to Buddhism. It was back around like 2011, 12. They also came across the Taoism book too, which made a lot of sense. So those Eastern philosophies were my first introduction to having a spiritual practice. And I had gone to retreats at Buddhist monasteries all over California. There was one I went to that was in Northern California, but the one I liked and I was going to once or twice a year for usually a few days to a week at a time was in Southern California, in San Diego County. And it was just a much better way of living for me. The lifestyle made much more sense. And it was people that were thinking outside the box that were staying there either as guests or living there as monks. And while it wasn't perfect, I did see some things I didn't resonate with, but it was better. It was better than being out amongst the NPCs and the normies. So that was my backup plan, to just go there. But I wanted to start healing first because, like I said, I was having some issues with pain, and also I was just feeling awful. And I'd come across some podcasts around that time, synchronistically. Back then, I didn't really know how everything kind of flows together when it comes into your life when it's supposed to. But looking back on it, there were these podcasts that started talking about alternative health and healing. So I started with acupuncture and these float tanks, the sensory deprivation chambers, and even cryotherapy. And they were awesome. They were really helping. After that, I was led to Ayurveda, and I did a dosha questionnaire, which is amazing. I really think you should check it out if you haven't already. I really respect Ayurveda to this day because they believe we're all different and we're changing too. We're in a constant state of growth. Well, correction. If you're doing the work, you're in a constant state of growth. If you're just coasting through life, okay, maybe then Ayurveda is not for you. But jokes aside, I found it really beneficial, and I started learning about myself, and it was really interesting. And I got to do an Abhyanga, I think it's pronounced. It's one of those hot oil massages, and also Shirodhara, where the warm oils poured slowly and gently on your head. And that was already starting to make a difference in my life. And I was like, wow, because I had hit a wall with therapy like 20 years ago. It just wasn't working. And some of the medications, not only did it help, I really think made things worse. And then in Western medicine, I'm not one to tell you not to go to the doctor. There's some things that I would definitely still go to one today for. But it's an unpopular opinion. But as a lot of you know that are watching this, there's some things they really have no explanation or can't help you with. It's not that I didn't want them to help. They'll just tell you, no, there's nothing we can do, or that's normal for someone your age. And I don't subscribe to that philosophy. Especially now, I truly believe there's nothing that can't be healed or reversed. I do believe nature does have a cure for everything, and our body is much more powerful and miraculous than they lead us to believe. So, on one of these podcasts around that time, I heard about ayahuasca, and it sounded like just what I needed. But I didn't have access to that. I wouldn't refer to plant medicines like that now, but at the time, I didn't know any quote-unquote drug people. Obviously, it's not drugs, but at the time, I was still new. So please forgive me for that, as I have to forgive myself. And obviously, now I revere the plant medicines and see what they're really capable of, although they can be abused and used like drugs. But that'll be a topic I'll get into probably over multiple videos, because I unfortunately see an awful lot with that. So I decided to put ayahuasca on hold. I figured I'd probably have to go down to South America at some point to try that. But during my research, which I recommend everyone does before they do that for sure, at least months worth, but I came across combo, and that sounded like it could be really beneficial for me. And I looked it up, and it turned out that there was this female facilitator serving it in my general area, like within the month, for a small group ceremony. So I made the appointment. And combo was very intense, and I'll get into my combo story some other time, because that's certainly another talk in and of itself as well. But after the ceremony, a few of the people there that were there said, "Hey, we're having an ayahuasca ceremony here in a few weeks. Do you want to come?" And I was thinking, yeah. And that's another example of how things align when they're meant to happen. So I did it, and I give ayahuasca credit. That's what turned my physical and mental healing journey into a spiritual one. And it seemed really odd, because if you know my background, I was probably what you would call agnostic. I was never completely atheist or nihilistic, like just thinking I believe in nothing. I always did feel there was some greater force in the universe, but I didn't know what. I tried different religions when I was a kid, and there were benefits and good points with a lot of them, but there always seemed to be holes as well in some of the theories. So there never was one perfect match for me, one be-all, end-all. So when I started having these spiritual inclinations, I was embarrassed. I know it's not the exact same thing, so don't misinterpret me, but it felt kind of like a spiritual coming out of the closet, because all the people I was surrounded by at that time, except for my spiritual friend from back home, were normies. They were pursuing matrix careers, talked about sports and going out. And here I was now surrounded by a different group that was comfortable talking about crystals and all this other stuff that the old people I was friends with seemed like they wouldn't understand. So I had a choice. It was a really pivotal moment. And basically what I did, and it didn't happen exactly at that moment, but my healing journey became the most important thing for me. I decided that took precedence. So what I did was I started creating new social media accounts gradually, and I did my new spiritual and healer friends on that. And slowly but surely, and it gained speed quickly as time went on, my old life faded out. That identity was no more. Hopefully you enjoyed my initial story as much as I do now, even though I did not while I was going through it. So if you're struggling now, don't worry. I got through it. And if I could, you can as well. I'll be sharing more updates and experiences and insights. So I recommend liking, following, and subscribing so you can stay posted.